November 16, 1957. Plainfield police enter a rusted old farmhouse on a cold night, unaware they are walking into a nightmare. Inside, the air is thick with the stench of decay. The officers' flashlights tremble as they scan the cluttered rooms. Suddenly, a beam of light falls upon something unspeakable hanging from the rafters. It is the missing store owner, Bernice Worden, found decapitated and strung up by her legs. The corpse is dressed out like a deer, with her head in a burlap sack nearby. But this is only the beginning. The house is filled with macabre creations, lampshades made of human faces, bowls made from skulls, chairs covered in human skin. An entire suit stitched together from female body parts hangs in a corner. In the kitchen, a heart sits in a pan on the stove. Seasoned officers flee the scene for fresh air, violently ill at the sight. The gruesome inventory seems endless. Skulls on bedposts and bowls made from sawed-off craniums. A lampshade sewn from a human face. A window blind pole cord decorated with lips. A vest-like corset flayed from a woman's torso. Boxes filled with human noses and female genitalia. A belt fashioned from human nipples and masks made of skin from 9 women's faces. In a paper bag, they find the face of Mary Hogan, a tavern keeper who vanished 3 years earlier. In a sack, Bernice Worden's head. Investigators realize they have entered a house of horrors beyond anyone's worst nightmares. A man named Ed Gein will soon become synonymous with unspeakable terror. This is the true story of Ed Gein, the butcher of Plainfield, the real-life killer who inspired Psycho, the Texas Chain Saw Massacre, and Silence of the Lambs.
Edward Theodore Gein was born on August 27, 1906, in rural Wisconsin. He grew up on this very Plainfield farm under the iron grip of his mother, Augusta Gein. Augusta was a fanatically religious woman who preached that the world was sinful, women, besides herself, were vessels of evil, and sex was a deadly sin. She dominated Ed's life completely. Augusta isolated Ed and his older brother Henry from outsiders. She kept them out of friends' homes and forbade any dating or social life. Every night, she read to them from the Bible about divine retribution and the fires of hell. In Ed's eyes, Augusta was more than a mother. She was a goddess, infallible and all-powerful. Augusta's harsh influence ensured Ed grew up with a deep fear of women and sexuality. He never dated, never left home, and worshipped his mother with an unhealthy devotion. In 1944, a tragedy struck. A mysterious fire on the property killed Ed's brother, Henry. The circumstances were odd. Ed reported Henry missing during a brush fire, and when authorities arrived, Ed led them straight to Henry's dead body. Bruises were reportedly found on Henry's head, but his death was officially ruled an accident. Some later wondered if this was Ed's first victim, eliminated out of jealousy because Henry had begun criticizing Augusta, but nothing was proven. A year later, in 1945, Augusta died after a series of strokes. Ed was devastated. He had lost his one friend, his entire world. Now utterly alone in the remote farmhouse, Ed fell into a despairing solitude. He sealed off Augusta's bedroom, preserving it like a shrine, untouched, immaculately clean, while the rest of the house decayed into squalor. Every day he longed for his mother, descending deeper into madness. Psychiatrists later noted this moment as the breaking point for Ed Gein's sanity. He became obsessed with death and the female form. To the townsfolk of Plainfield, Ed Gein was odd, but seemingly harmless. He did odd jobs, worked as a handyman, and even babysat local children, perhaps because he related better to kids than adults. December 8, 1954. Plainfield's first brush with horror. Tavern owner Mary Hogan closes up for the night and vanishes without a trace. In the empty bar, police find blood on the floor and a spent bullet casing and drag marks leading out into the snow. Mary's disappearance went unsolved. Few connected it to quiet Ed Gein. After all, he seemed too meek to hurt a fly. Life in Plainfield returned to normal, until 3 years later. November 16th, 1957, the first day of deer hunting season. Most men in town are in the woods. At Warden's Hardware, owner Bernice Warden is working alone. She vanishes sometime that morning, leaving only a trail of blood on the floor and an open cash register. Frank Warden, a deputy sheriff, is immediately alarmed. The scene is eerily similar to Mary Hogan's disappearance 3 years prior. Blood on the floor, a missing woman. Frank recalls something crucial. The last sales receipt in the register was for a gallon of antifreeze, sold to Ed Gein that morning. Frank tells the sheriff his suspicion Ed Gein was the last person to see his mother alive. Authorities head out to the isolated Gein farm at nightfall to question him, and what they find will forever scar them. Finding Ed absent, Sheriff Art Schley and Deputy Joe Salvatore search the property. They force open a shed out back and walk straight into hell on earth. Room by room, the ghastly inventory grows. In the kitchen, a soup bowl crafted from a human skull sits on a table. On the stovetop, a pan containing what appears to be a human heart. The bedroom, skulls impaled on the bedposts. 2 severed heads wrapped in plastic bags. Living area, a lampshade made from the skin of a human face. Chairs reupholstered with human skin, the fatty residue still on them. A shoebox filled with dried human noses, another with female genitalia from multiple victims. On a hanger, a grotesque corset vest, made from a skinned female torso, complete with straps to wear it like clothing. And perhaps most horrifying, masks. Human faces peeled off, preserved with oil, 9 of them in total, hanging or stored in bags. The investigating team realizes Ed Gein had literally been wearing the skin of these victims. By the time the sun rises on November 17, the world knows of the Plainfield Ghoul. Reporters swarmed the small town. Crowds of curious onlookers gather, causing traffic jams as thousands drive past the Gein farm, hoping for a glimpse of evil. The name Ed Gein is splashed across headlines nationwide, forever linking Plainfield with one of the most twisted crime scenes in history. Ed Gein was arrested that same night at a neighbor's house while having dinner. Oddly calm. In custody, he seemed mild and polite, a quiet man who didn't look like a murderer. Under questioning, Ed eventually confessed, but what he revealed defied all understanding. Ed tells investigators how over the past decade, he made as many as 40 nocturnal trips to local cemeteries. He admits that on about 10 of those trips, he dug up fresh graves of recently buried middle-aged women who reminded him of his mother, exhuming their bodies. Ed calmly describes how he skinned the corpses, tanning their hides to craft his household projects, the chairs, the masks, the suit of human skin. He even fashioned a woman suit, leggings, and a torso that he draped over himself in the moonlight, literally attempting to become his mother by crawling into her skin. Gein denies cannibalism, but admits to grave robbing and murder. He initially only confesses to killing Bernice Warden, claiming it was an accident as he handled a gun that went off, and to the 1954 murder of Mary Hogan when confronted with her remains. He insists all other remains came from graves, which many officers refuse to believe. To verify Ed's bizarre story, authorities exhumed some of the graves he named. To their astonishment, they found empty coffins and bodies missing parts, exactly as Gein described. This corroborated that Ed truly had been raiding graves and using corpses for years. When asked why he did these things, Ed allegedly replied in earnest, "I missed Mother." Some experts believe each woman he exhumed or killed was an attempt to bring back Augusta, his beloved mother, or to exact revenge on her by defiling women who resembled her. Psychiatrists diagnosed Gein with schizophrenia and pronounced him legally insane. When news of his crimes broke, even those who knew Ed could not reconcile the gentle handyman with the mad ghoul described in the papers. But the forensic evidence didn't lie. Ed Gein was far from harmless. He had crossed every imaginable line, shattering the innocence of this small community forever. Shortly after his arrest, Ed Gein was arraigned for first-degree murder in the death of Bernice Warden. He entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. Doctors confirmed he was psychologically unfit for trial, suffering from schizophrenia. So, in 1958, Gein was admitted to a mental institution. Gein would spend the next 10 years in a mental hospital. In 1968, doctors announced Gein was finally mentally competent to stand trial. A trial date was set for November 1968, 11 years after his crimes were discovered. Gein's trial began on November 7, 1968, in Waushara County Court. Given the gruesome details, his lawyer requested a bench trial, no jury, to avoid inflaming jurors. On November 14, 1968, Judge Gulmar delivered his verdict. Gein was guilty of the murder of Bernice Worden. However, this was immediately followed by a second phase to determine Gein's sanity. After hearing doctors from both sides, Judge Gulmar ruled Gein not guilty by reason of insanity, reaffirming that Ed would remain in psychiatric confinement for the rest of his life.
For the next 16 years, Ed Gein remained locked away. He died of respiratory failure due to cancer on July 26, 1984, at the age of 77. Sometimes, the scariest monsters are real. Thank you for watching this in-depth true crime documentary on Ed Gein. If this story compelled or chilled you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into true crime and dark history. Let us know in the comments what case you'd like us to cover next. Until next time, stay safe.